The Galactic Council Hall was a vast, glowing chamber where hundreds of alien species gathered. The walls shimmered like frozen starlight, and tall banners of different civilizations hung in silence. In the very center of the hall stood a single human, Captain Daniel Ross. His hands were bound with glowing energy cuffs that hummed softly, and his eyes were tired but calm. Above him, on a floating platform, sat the High Judge, a tall alien with silver skin and deep red eyes. Around the circle, alien voices whispered in dozens of strange languages. Some looked curious, others looked afraid. To most of them, Daniel was not a man but a danger, a relic from a violent species long thought extinct. The judge raised his voice, deep and echoing. "Captain Daniel Ross of Earth," he said, "you stand accused of crimes against the Galactic Alliance. You interfered with the natural order. You spread forbidden human technology. You endangered entire colonies. What do you have to say for yourself?" Daniel lifted his head. His voice was calm but full of pain. "I only saved lives," he said. "That's all I did." A murmur spread through the hall. Some laughed. Others hissed. The judge slammed his hand on the glowing table. "You caused chaos. You changed their biology with your human medicine. The Kareth species were never meant to survive that plague." Daniel took a slow breath. "I didn't think about laws," he said softly. "I saw people dying. I helped." His words hung in the air. For a moment the hall was quiet. Even the flickering lights above seemed to dim. But then a tall insectoid alien rose from the crowd. "Humans are dangerous," it shouted. "This is why they vanished from the stars. They break rules, they destroy balance, they pretend to be heroes." Another alien added, "He is proof. He thinks he is above our laws." Daniel felt the eyes of every being in the chamber burning into him. He wanted to speak again, to explain, but the judge raised his hand. "Enough," the judge said coldly. "The council has heard your words. Your actions saved some but endangered many more. You broke the sacred law. The punishment is death." The sound of the word death seemed to echo endlessly. Daniel stood very still. He had expected this, but hearing it made his chest tighten. He looked up at the glowing ceiling and thought of Earth, the green forests, the blue oceans, long gone now. He was the last human, and his story would end here on an alien world that never understood him. Guards moved closer. Their armor glowed blue. One of them pressed a control and Daniel's cuffs tightened. He didn't resist. He had faced death before on battlefields, in space wrecks, and in the silence of deep voids. But this felt colder. The High Judge raised the ancient hammer of judgment made of black crystal. "By order of the Galactic Council," he said, "the human known as Daniel Ross is condemned. The sentence will be carried out now." Daniel closed his eyes. Somewhere deep inside, a small part of him still hoped someone would speak. Someone who knew the truth. Someone who remembered what he did. The judge lifted the hammer higher. The air around it vibrated with power. The execution light began to form above Daniel, a glowing orb of energy that would erase him completely, leaving no trace behind. And then, a voice pierced the silence. "Don't kill my husband." The words were loud, full of terror and emotion. The entire hall froze. The judge stopped mid-motion. Hundreds of alien heads turned at once toward the balcony high above. There stood a young alien woman. Her skin shimmered like pale silver, her eyes bright blue and wet with tears. Her clothes were torn as if she had run all the way here. She was trembling, but her voice carried across the hall like thunder. The guards looked at each other in confusion. The judge's red eyes narrowed. "Who dares interrupt the sacred judgment?" he shouted. The woman took a deep breath. "My name is Lyra of Kareth," she said, her voice shaking but strong. "And I am his bonded partner. You cannot kill him." A wave of whispers spread through the crowd. "Bonded partner? Impossible. A human. Lies." Daniel's eyes opened. He stared at her, stunned. He knew that face. He remembered her from years ago, on a dying moon, a crash site, and a promise. The judge's voice trembled with fury. "You dare speak false bonds before the council?" Lyra stepped forward to the railing. Her silver hair caught the light. "I speak truth," she said. "You call him a criminal, but he saved my people when no one else would. He saved me, and by the ancient law of Kareth, he is bound to me. He is my husband." Silence filled the hall. The glowing orb above Daniel flickered and vanished. Every being in the chamber turned their eyes to the trembling young alien woman, who had just challenged the most powerful court in the galaxy, and Daniel, standing at the center, chained and broken, felt something he had not felt in years. Hope. The hall was frozen in silence after the alien woman's scream. Every pair of alien eyes, glowing, blinking, shifting, turned toward the balcony. The guards hesitated, unsure of what to do. No one had ever dared interrupt a Galactic Council sentence before. The High Judge's voice broke the stillness, sharp and furious. "Seize her!" he ordered. Two guards with silver armor lifted their plasma staffs and moved toward the stairs. But before they could reach her, the woman raised her hand. A wave of bright blue energy burst from her palm, spreading through the air like ripples on water. The guards stumbled backward, their weapons sparking. Gasps filled the chamber. Daniel's heart pounded. He recognized that light. It was the same strange energy he'd seen years ago when he had pulled a dying alien woman from a wrecked ship on a red desert moon. That woman had whispered one name before she lost consciousness. Lyra. Now, here she was again. The judge stood slowly, his red eyes glowing brighter. "How dare you use power in this hall?" he growled. "Who are you to defy the council's law?" Lyra took a step forward, her silver skin reflecting the glowing lights above. "I am Lyra of Kerith, daughter of the House of Nerith," she said clearly. "And this man you call criminal is no enemy. He is my bonded mate." The chamber erupted in noise. Dozens of alien voices shouted at once. "Impossible. A human can't bond with a Kerith. This must be a trick." The judge slammed his crystal hammer down and silence returned. "The council recognizes no such claim. Humans are extinct. Their biology is incompatible with Kerith bonding rituals." Lyra's eyes burned with emotion. "Then let the council test me," she said. "Test the bond mark if you dare. You will see truth." Daniel stared at her, his mind racing. He remembered the Kerith, the elegant, long-lived species who ruled over half the galaxy. They were proud, almost divine in how they saw themselves. For one of them to stand before the council and call a human her mate. It was unthinkable, the judge sneered. "You play a dangerous game, child. The penalty for false claim is death." Lyra didn't move. "Then kill me beside him," she said quietly. "For I will not watch you destroy the man who saved me." Her words hit Daniel like a thunderbolt. Memories flashed through his mind. The smoke of the crashed ship, her trembling hands as he bandaged her wounds, her frightened voice asking if humans still existed. He had smiled back then and said, "At least one does." He thought she had forgotten him. He was wrong. The judge's voice boomed again. "This hearing is no place for lies born of sympathy." "Guards!" But Lyra's voice rose over his. "The council hides the truth," she shouted. "You call him criminal because he healed us with his human science. You feared what humans could do, so you made him your scapegoat." Whispers swept across the audience. Some alien delegates turned to one another uneasy. The word truth echoed like a spark in dry air. Daniel lifted his head. For the first time, he saw fear on the faces of the judges. Not fear of him, but of what she might reveal. The judge pointed at her, trembling with rage. "You will stop this madness now." Lyra ignored him. She placed her hand on her chest and a faint symbol began to glow through her skin. A swirling mark of light like a star in motion. The same mark began to shimmer faintly on Daniel's arm, glowing through his torn sleeve. Gasps filled the room. The High Judge froze. The bond mark was sacred among the Kerith, a living link that could only exist between two connected souls. It could not be forged or faked. To the Kerith, such a bond was stronger than law itself. "Impossible," the judge whispered, stepping back. "No human can share that link," Lyra's voice softened. "And yet, here it is." Daniel looked down at the light moving under his skin. He didn't understand how or when it happened, but the mark pulsed with her heartbeat. Lyra turned to the crowd. "You call him dangerous because he is human. But what is more dangerous, saving lives or hiding the truth?" The words cut through the chamber. Even the guards hesitated, their hands trembling on their weapons. The High Judge slammed his hammer again. "Enough, guards, remove her now." But no one moved. Lyra walked down the stairs slowly, her steps echoing. The energy cuffs on Daniel's wrists flickered, reacting to her presence. The mark on both their skins glowed brighter, stronger like a small sun connecting them. Daniel whispered her name, his voice low and full of disbelief. "Lyra, why would you do this?" She stopped before him, tears in her glowing blue eyes. Because you once saved me when the galaxy turned its back, she said softly. Now I will not let the galaxy destroy you. The council hall fell into a deeper silence than before. For the first time, the mighty judges looked uncertain. And as Lyra stood beside Daniel, her hand reaching for his, the audience of countless alien races realized they were witnessing something forbidden. Something powerful, something that could shake the galaxy itself. The legend of the human who defied extinction was only beginning. The Galactic Council hall still hummed with silent shock. No one dared speak as the strange light faded between Daniel and Lyra's skin. The High Judge stood frozen, his authority trembling. The whispers of hundreds of alien diplomats filled the air like the rustle of distant waves. Then Lyra took a slow breath and turned toward the council. Her silver eyes glistened with memory. You all sit here calling him a monster, she said softly. But none of you were there when my world burned. The lights in the hall dimmed as her voice filled the chamber. The holographic recorders shimmered to life, projecting her memories for all to see. A broken world appeared in the air above the courtroom, a red, dying moon under a sky full of smoke. Shattered ships lay across the dunes. The Kareth survivors were weak, coughing, feverish. Many were already dead. The council members gasped as they saw the horror they had ignored. Lyra continued, her voice trembling but clear. It was the plague that destroyed half our colonies. The council refused to send help, fearing infection. They left us to die. I was a medic then, trying to save my people. The image shifted to a small camp. A young Lyra was kneeling beside a wounded alien child. Her hands shook. Her breath was weak. Behind her, flames devoured the crashed transport. She looked toward the dark horizon, where something was moving through the dust. Daniel Ross. The hologram showed him then, a lone figure in a torn human suit, his face hidden behind a cracked helmet dragging a heavy supply crate. He moved through the storm, coughing, stumbling, refusing to stop. Lyra's voice broke slightly. He shouldn't have been there. No human had been seen in centuries, but he came, alone. In the memory, Daniel reached her and dropped the crate beside her. He took off his helmet despite the toxic air, his face pale and bleeding from a wound above his eye. He smiled weakly. I brought you oxygen, he said in the projection, and medicine. Enough for your camp. Lyra's younger self stared at him in disbelief. You're human, she whispered. He only nodded. That's what's left of me. The hologram shifted again, showing the days that followed. Daniel stayed in the camp even as the infection spread. He burned the bodies of the dead, cleaned the wounds of the living, and shared his rations with alien children who once feared humans as legends. He worked until his hands bled. He never asked for reward or recognition. Then came the night the council sent drones to destroy the infected zone, to contain the plague. The skies burned again, this time with fire from above. Daniel and Lyra had barely enough time to shield the survivors in a cave. He was hit by falling debris while protecting her. The image froze on that moment, his arms around her, shielding her body from the blast. In the present, Lyra's voice cracked. He saved me when my own people abandoned me. He risked everything for a race that once called his kind monsters. Some of the alien delegates looked away in shame. Others watched the hologram in silence, guilt written across their alien faces. The High Judge slammed his hand on the table. Enough of this manipulation, he shouted. These are mere memories. Emotion does not erase law. But another voice rose from the crowd. A reptilian ambassador stood, his voice calm but heavy. Judge, you cannot ignore truth. We see it. The humans saved them. Others began to speak too. He healed them. He shared human medicine. He risked extinction to protect strangers. Daniel watched in disbelief as the tide slowly turned. For years he had been hunted, hated, and now, for the first time, someone was speaking for him. The High Judge's tone turned cold. Even if what she says is true, his actions were illegal. The human's interference broke interspecies law. Lyra turned toward him, her voice full of fire. Then your law's broken, because it punishes mercy and hides cowardice behind rules. Gasps filled the chamber. The judge rose, pointing at her in fury. You insult this council? Lyra stood tall. No, she said. I speak for truth, for honor, for life, and if that makes me a traitor, then so be it. The hologram flickered away, leaving only silence. Daniel looked up at her, his voice low. You could have forgotten me, Lyra. Why risk all this? She turned to him, her silver eyes soft. Because the galaxy forgot what humans truly are. And someone has to remind them. The hall went silent again. Every alien felt the weight of her words. Somewhere deep within the heart of the council, an old truth began to stir, one that no law could bury. That day, for the first time in centuries, the galaxy remembered what it meant to be human. The memory projection vanished, leaving the Galactic Council hall cloaked in silence. The floating lights flickered above like dying stars, and the sound of hundreds of aliens breathing filled the space. Every face turned toward Lyra, some filled with awe, others with disbelief, and many with fear. The High Judge stood, his long robe sweeping the floor. His red eyes glowed with restrained rage. "Enough," he said, his voice shaking the air. "We have seen enough of your emotional tricks. The Council's judgment stands. The human is guilty." But Lyra didn't move. Her silver eyes gleamed with quiet fire. "You still refuse truth," she said. "Then let me show you the proof you buried." The crowd gasped. The judge's face twitched. "What are you talking about?" Lyra reached into the glowing pouch on her belt and drew out a small crystal shard. It pulsed with faint blue light. "This," she said, holding it up, "is from the Kareth Medical Archives. It records the genetic data from the plague that nearly destroyed us, and it shows that human intervention didn't cause mutation, it cured it." The hall erupted in noise. Alien voices overlapped, translators buzzed, and officials whispered frantically. The judge slammed his hammer down. "That data was sealed by order of the Council." "Exactly," Lyra said sharply. "You sealed it because it proved that a human saved us when your own scientists failed." The judge's mouth opened, but no sound came out. For the first time, Daniel saw fear, not anger, in the alien's eyes. Lyra continued, her voice firm. "I found this crystal buried in the ruins of our medical base, hidden under false records. The Council wanted the galaxy to believe that the cure came from your labs, but it didn't. It came from Daniel Ross, the last human." The room exploded into chaos. Some delegates shouted for a retrial. Others demanded silence. A few looked at Daniel with new respect, even admiration. Daniel stood still, staring at the glowing crystal in her hand. He remembered the night he made that serum. He had mixed his own blood with alien medicine, desperate to find something that worked. He didn't know it would become history's secret. "I didn't save anyone for reward," he said quietly. "I just couldn't walk away." Lyra turned to him, her expression softening. "And that's what they feared most," she whispered. "Not your weapons, not your strength, your heart," the High Judge roared, slamming his hammer again. "Lies, fabrications. The Council will not be mocked by forbidden relics." But before he could continue, an older alien, a tall being with 4 eyes and golden robes, rose slowly from his seat. He was one of the elders of the Founding, a species so ancient that even the judge bowed to them. "High Judge," the elder said in a calm, ancient voice, "the crystal's signature is real. It bears the seal of the Kareth Medical Code. These are not lies." A ripple of shock passed through the hall. The judge's control was slipping. Lyra stepped closer to Daniel. "You wanted to erase him from history," she said, her voice trembling but steady. "But his name will live even if this council falls." Daniel looked around the hall, at the banners of 1,000 worlds, at the faces that had once judged him as less than life itself. He saw them now uncertain, afraid, ashamed, and in that moment he realized what this trial truly was. It was never about crime. It was about fear. The High Judge leaned forward, his voice like venom. "You think the galaxy needs humans again? You think mercy and chaos will save us? Humanity was wiped out for a reason." Daniel lifted his head, meeting the judge's gaze. "Maybe it wasn't the galaxy that wiped us out," he said quietly. "Maybe it was people like you, afraid of what they didn't understand." The chamber fell silent. Even the translators stopped humming. Lyra turned back to the crowd. "This is the truth you buried," she said, raising the crystal high. "You condemned him not because he broke the law, but because he reminded you of what you lost: courage, compassion, and the will to do what's right." Her voice echoed through the vast hall. The holographic recorders blinked red. Everything she said was being transmitted to every world in the system. The council could no longer hide. The High Judge's face turned pale. "Cut the feed," he shouted, but the guards hesitated. The bond mark on Lyra's and Daniel's arms began to glow again, bright and alive, reacting to the truth being spoken. Daniel whispered, "Lyra, they'll come for you now. She smiled faintly. Then let them come. The truth is already free. In that instant, a sudden tremor shook the chamber. The great doors burst open. A stream of light filled the hall, followed by the sound of marching boots. A new voice rang out, firm and commanding. By the authority of the Kareth Empire, it declared, this trial is over. And standing in the doorway, shining under the starry glow, was a group of armored Kareth guards, their royal crest blazing like fire. The galaxy's greatest secret was no longer hidden. The massive doors of the Galactic Council hall slammed open, their ancient hinges groaning like thunder. A bright blue light flooded the chamber as a formation of Kareth royal guards marched in. Their armor gleamed with living energy, and the sigil of the royal house glowed across their chests, a radiant spiral star, symbol of the empire itself. Every alien in the hall rose in shock. Even the High Judge's voice faltered. Who dares interrupt the session of the Galactic Council? He demanded. The lead guard, a tall Kareth warrior with obsidian skin and silver eyes, stepped forward. We come under the order of Her High Grace, Princess Lyra of the Kareth Empire, he said, his voice firm as stone. Gasps filled the chamber. Dozens of alien representatives whispered in disbelief. Princess? The judge turned pale, his red eyes wide. Slowly, his gaze shifted to Lyra, who stood beside Daniel, her silver hair shimmering in the council's light. Daniel looked at her in confusion. Princess? He whispered. Lyra lowered her head for a moment, her voice soft. I didn't tell you before. I am not just a healer, Daniel. I'm the heir to the Kareth throne. The hall broke into chaos. Voices clashed, translators struggled to keep up. Some shouted in outrage, others in awe. A princess bonded to a human. This is a scandal! The Kareth Empire will wage war. The High Judge struck his hammer again, but his voice no longer carried authority. This cannot be true. You disgrace your royal blood. Lyra looked up, her eyes glowing with faint blue light. The disgrace, she said calmly, is in your lies, Judge. You condemned the man who saved my people. You tried to erase him just to protect your pride. The judge's fury trembled through his body. You dare speak to me in this hall? The council stands above all empires. But the Kareth guard raised his staff, the energy around it pulsing like lightning. Not above the Kareth Empire, he said coldly, and certainly not above royal blood. The delegates murmured again, some shifting uneasily. For centuries, the Kareth Empire had been untouchable, wealthy, powerful, and ancient beyond memory. To defy its princess was to risk destruction. Daniel stood still, feeling the room tilt from fury to fear. He could hardly believe what was happening. A few hours ago, he was just a condemned man. Now the most powerful empire in the galaxy was standing beside him. The judge tried to recover control. This is a political stunt. The bond cannot be proven real. Humans and Kareth cannot... Before he could finish, Lyra lifted her hand. The mark on her wrist flared to life again, a swirl of light that pulsed with her heartbeat. At the same moment, Daniel's own mark glowed to match it, two lights beating as one. The entire hall gasped. The sacred bond was undeniable. The ancient energy that connected two souls could not be forged, not even by science. One of the elder delegates whispered, "The prophecy of the twin lights." "It's real." The High Judge staggered back a step. No, this is impossible. This cannot happen." Lyra's voice grew stronger. "It already has." She turned to the crowd, her words echoing through the hall. "You fear what you don't understand. You call humans extinct, yet this one human saved us when no one else would. Now he stands condemned for the same kindness that made him worthy." Her eyes swept over the rows of alien leaders. "If this is your justice, then your council deserves to fall." Silence followed, heavy, tense, and sharp. Then a reptilian ambassador stood. "The princess speaks truth," he said. "The council acts from fear, not law. I call for suspension of judgment," another joined him. "Seconded." One by one, delegates began standing, some out of guilt, others out of courage. The High Judge looked around in horror as control slipped from his hands. His power was dissolving in front of the galaxy. Daniel could feel the shift too, hope like a flame spreading through the room. He turned to Lyra, his voice quiet. "You didn't have to do this." She smiled faintly. "Yes, I did. You once gave me your life. Now I give you mine." The High Judge slammed his hammer one final time. "Enough, this meeting is adjourned." Guards, take them both away. But no one moved. The Kareth warriors stepped in front of Daniel and Lyra, forming a glowing shield wall. By royal decree, their leader said, no one touches them. For a long moment the judge stood shaking, his pride collapsing. Then in a trembling whisper he said, if the human lives, this council dies. Lyra met his gaze. Then perhaps it is time for something better to rise in its place. Thunder rumbled through the hall as if the stars themselves had heard her words. The balance of the galaxy had shifted, and the storm within the council had just begun. The council hall trembled with energy as the Kareth royal guard stood between the human and the judges. Every beam of light, every sound of armor felt like the heartbeat of a storm about to break. The crowd of alien delegates murmured in panic, their translators buzzing out of rhythm. Daniel Ross stood still, the light from the bond mark pulsing gently on his arm. His heart was heavy, his mind spinning. Hours ago he was a prisoner waiting to die. Now a princess had called him her husband, and an empire stood ready to defend him. But he saw the danger. If the council didn't get what it wanted, thousands could die in the conflict that would follow. The High Judge raised his hammer again, his voice hoarse but loud. Enough. The council will not bend to emotion nor bow to royal games. The human must face judgment. He turned his red eyes to Lyra. You claim the bond is true. Then you must prove it. If you share his soul, you will share his punishment. Stand with him in death and let the stars decide. The chamber went still. Even the air seemed to stop moving. Daniel's head snapped toward Lyra. No, he said immediately. I won't let you. Lyra's gaze softened. You don't have a choice, Daniel, she whispered. We are bound. The guards tensed, ready to strike, but Lyra raised a hand. Stand down. Her voice was calm, royal, commanding. The soldiers obeyed instantly. She stepped forward until she stood beside Daniel again. The glowing mark between them pulsed brighter, casting blue light across their faces. Her silver eyes shimmered like tears in starlight. You once shared your oxygen with me when I was dying, she said softly. You shared your strength. Now I will share your fate. Daniel shook his head, his voice breaking. You can't die for me, Lyra. You're a princess, an entire people depend on you. Lyra smiled faintly. And what kind of ruler would I be if I let an innocent man die in my place? The High Judge's mouth twisted into a cruel grin. So be it, he said coldly. The council accepts your choice. Prepare the execution beam. Gasps erupted across the room. Some alien delegates shouted in protest. She's royalty. You can't. This will cause war. But the judge ignored them. He slammed his hammer one last time, and the floor beneath Daniel and Lyra began to glow with deadly red light. The execution platform, an ancient device of pure energy, awoke. Daniel's pulse quickened. He could feel the heat building beneath his feet. He wanted to fight, to break free, but his cuffs held firm. Lyra looked at him, her expression calm, fearless. Don't be afraid, she whispered. We will see the stars together. Then suddenly the hall filled with blinding white light. A sound like thunder roared overhead, and the massive chamber doors exploded inward again. Hold fire, shouted a deep voice. Through the smoke stepped a towering figure in black and gold armor. He removed his helmet, revealing proud, sharp features and the same silver eyes as Lyra. His voice carried like a blade through the hall. By order of the Kareth throne, this trial is over, the delegates gasped. Daniel's eyes widened. Lyra's lips parted in shock. Father? It was Emperor Thalon, ruler of the Kareth Empire, the most powerful being in the known galaxy. The High Judge stumbled back, his voice shaking. Your Majesty, this is highly irregular. The Emperor cut him off with a glare that could freeze stars. Irregular? He said coldly. You dared to threaten my daughter's life in the name of your so-called law. He turned toward Daniel, his expression unreadable. And you, he said quietly. You are the human who risked everything to save her. Daniel nodded once. I didn't know she was a princess. She was just someone who needed help. For the first time, the Emperor's stern face softened. He looked at his daughter, then at Daniel, then at the glowing bond marks connecting them. The bond is real, he murmured. The prophecy fulfilled. The High Judge, pale and trembling, tried to speak. This human, he broke council law. The Emperor silenced him with a raised hand. Enough, the council hides behind its laws to bury its shame. But no law stands above truth, he turned to the guards. Release them both. The energy cuffs dissolved instantly. Daniel stumbled forward, free for the first time in months. Lyra caught his hand, and for a heartbeat everything felt still. The storm, the fear, the anger, all gone. The Emperor faced the council one final time. If you ever again raise judgment against my daughter or her bonded mate, you will answer not to this hall but to the full might of the Kareth Empire. The High Judge fell silent. His power was broken. As the Emperor turned to leave, Lyra whispered to Daniel, "You see? The stars made their choice." And as they walked out together, hand in hand, the light of their bond still shining, the whispers of the crowd followed them like wind through the cosmos. The galaxy had just witnessed the impossible. Love stronger than fear, truth stronger than law, and the legend of the human and the alien princess was far from over. The Galactic Council Hall, once a place of judgment and fear, now felt like a battlefield after the storm. Smoke from the shattered doors curled through the air. The walls still glowed faintly from the power surge that had followed the Emperor's arrival. Every alien delegate, once loud, cruel, and certain, now sat silent, afraid to breathe too loudly in the presence of a living legend. At the center of the chamber, Daniel Ross stood beside Princess Lyra, the faint blue bond mark still glowing on both their arms. Behind them, the towering Emperor Thalon of Kareth glared down from the council's dais, his voice echoing through the hall. "This trial," he said slowly, "is over, but the truth it revealed will echo through every corner of the galaxy." His voice rolled like thunder, shaking the council's foundation. The High Judge, pale and trembling, still tried to speak. "Oh, Your Majesty, this human defied the law. The council cannot allow chaos to—" "Chaos?" The Emperor interrupted, his tone sharp as a blade. "You speak of chaos when it was your lies that nearly destroyed my daughter's world. You would have executed the very man who saved your colonies from extinction. That is not law, that is cowardice." The hall fell silent. The Emperor turned to Daniel. His golden armor caught the light of the shattered ceiling. "Human," he said, "you acted when others hesitated. You saved those who scorned you. You defied fear itself. Tell me why." Daniel met his gaze, standing tall though his clothes were torn and his face bruised. "Because someone had to," he said simply. "Because if we stop helping others, no law or empire can save us." Lyra smiled softly beside him, her hand brushing his. For a moment, even the Emperor's expression softened. Then he nodded slowly. "Spoken like a true guardian of life. I have ruled for centuries, but I have rarely heard such words from any being, human or alien." He turned back to the council. "By decree of the Kareth Empire," he announced, his voice carrying across the entire chamber, "Captain Daniel Ross of Earth is hereby pardoned of all false charges. His deeds shall be recorded in the star archives as an act of honor and mercy." The words struck the room like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. But the Emperor wasn't finished. He looked at the delegates, his tone darkening. "Let this be a lesson to every species that hides behind fear. The galaxy does not belong to the strongest, it belongs to those brave enough to care." One by one, the alien representatives lowered their heads. Some in shame, some in respect. The High Judge, once so powerful, fell to his knees, his authority turned to dust. Lyra took a step forward, her silver gown flowing behind her. "The council forgot what justice meant," she said, her voice clear and steady. "They called compassion a crime. But today the stars have judged differently." She turned to Daniel, her eyes glimmering. "You taught us something my people had forgotten. That even one heart, one human heart, can change the galaxy." Daniel looked around the hall, seeing beings from worlds he'd never known staring at him in awe. He had no crown, no army, no empire, just the will to help someone once in need. Yet that simple choice had changed everything. The Emperor raised his hand, and the massive banners of the council shimmered, replaced by a holographic sigil, the mark of the Kareth Empire entwined with a faint outline of Earth's lost emblem. A symbol of unity. "Let this mark," the Emperor declared, "stand as a reminder that the age of fear is over. From this day forward, the humans are not extinct. They are remembered." The chamber erupted, not with anger this time, but applause. Hundreds of alien voices in dozens of languages joined in a roar that shook the walls. For the first time in centuries, the name human was spoken with reverence, not fear. Lyra turned to Daniel, her voice gentle but full of wonder. "You're free now. What will you do?" Daniel looked up at the fractured ceiling, where stars shone through like diamonds. "I don't know," he said with a quiet smile, "but wherever there's life that needs saving, I'll be there." The Emperor stepped down from the dais, placing a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "Then go with my blessing, human of Earth. May the galaxy never forget what you've done." As Daniel and Lyra walked side by side out of the hall, the massive doors opened once more, not with force but with light. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly before them, shining brighter than ever. Behind them, the crowd whispered words that would soon become legend across 1,000 worlds. Perhaps humanity was not lost. Perhaps it was waiting to be reborn. And somewhere deep among the stars, a new chapter began, one written not in conquest, but in compassion, courage, and love that crossed the stars themselves.